friends, time flies. It's July. I want to talk about how my reading year has been going so far. And Greg over at the channel Supposedly Fun put together a list of questions for his own mid-year check-in video that I really liked. And so I want to take my turn answering those questions. So my gratitude to Greg for the idea, and I'll link his video in the description below. Please go check it out. The first question is, how has your reading year been? And my answer is it's been good. I think I've been reading a lot of good books, and it has felt a little bit chaotic, but I think that's partly just how much I'm reading, and because I haven't really had time to talk about and review all of the books I've been finishing. I'm trying to catch up on June reviews now. It's also been a very book club driven reading year, which I think is fun. I've been participating in Charlie's book club on Fable. I have also been participating in a fantasy book club at work, and I have another set of friends I've been doing buddy reads with as well. And it's really fun. I love talking about a book in detail and being able to get to know my own taste and my friends' tastes better by talking about a book as we are experiencing it. And it's also nice. I am such a planner with my reading. I have my next 10 reads mapped out in detail, but the buddy reads add this level of spontaneity to that, and it'll just like bump something way up the priority list. And I think that's probably a healthy thing for me to do. The second question is, how many books have you read so far? So far, today's July 5th, I have read 52 books so far this year. My goal was and is 60 for the year, so I'm gonna far exceed that. And I do have to admit that it would be fun. I think it would be fun to get 100 now that I've made it this far, but I don't want to like hold myself to that necessarily. And I don't know that this is really like a pace that is that fun. I think part of the reason I've been having trouble keeping up with the reviews is because I just haven't had, I've been going too fast, and something to think about. The third question is, what's something you haven't gotten to yet but want to? I don't know if I can find where the book is, but All Hail Chaos by Sarah Reese Brennan is a sequel that I would love to get to soon. In the first book, a sick girl is transplanted into the world of her favorite fantasy book series, but when she is transplanted, she is now inhabiting the body of a villainess who is due to be executed the next day. It's not a parody series, but it is a very genre aware romp, and I'm very excited to continue the series. I also think I'm just anticipating I need to read a little bit more lighthearted stuff. I have been really reading a lot of like heavy literary fiction, and I think in the second half of the year I would like to mix that up a little bit more. Four, do you have an anticipated release still to come this year? There's two big ones that I will for sure drop everything to read this year when they come out. The first one is Partita by Barbara Kingsolver. She's just one of my favorite authors. I've loved every book I've read from her. Partita, from what I've heard, is about a woman who is a piano teacher in rural Tennessee, and she gets a call from her former lover, and that throws her back into the past. And she was like a concert pianist, or she was trained as a pianist in the past. And the blurb says that the novel reflects on class barriers, the risk of ambition, and the timeless love affair between life and art. And that just sounds like my jam. I think I'm going to love it. The next book I'm really excited for coming out this year is The Thrice Bound Fool by Christopher Buehlman. Just another author that has risen to be one of my favorites, and this is the sequel to The Black Tongue Thief, which I just reread earlier this year, so I'm really ready for the sequel. The fifth question is, any new favorite authors or books? Definitely have a favorite author I'd like to talk about. At least, I don't know if you've read one book from an author, I don't know that you can consider them a favorite, but an author that I want to read more from is Juliet Marillier, who had been recommended to me for a long time and was on my like list to read for a long time. And only this spring did I read The Daughter of the Forest, and the people who recommended her to me were correct in doing that. The Daughter of the Forest was just so beautifully written, and the story was told so patiently that the payoff at the end was really good. And I am sure I'll be reading more Juliet Merlier. Question 6 is, who is your favorite character of the year so far? I had to think about this one a little bit when I was brainstorming for this video because characters tend not to stick with me after I'm finished reading a book. I tend to remember the themes and the way it made me feel, but not the characters. I don't really latch onto characters in that way. But there are some exceptions. The exceptions tend to be in fantasy. And my answer for this is, in fact, that it was very nice to return to Captain Vimes on my reread of Guards. He is the jaded and cynical captain of the Watch, and he is nevertheless quite caring, and he wants to pursue justice. And Guards is just the beginning of his arc, but there is something about the Discworld novels where the characters are really the center of it for me. And so that was great. Question 7 is, has any book or piece of book news made you happy or sad? I'm going to talk about book news here. I was happy to hear that the Booker Prize is making strides to change its eligibility window so that readers will be able to access all of the books on the long list before the shortlist is announced. So the way it has worked is that a book could be announced on the long list, but it might not be released for sale until after the shortlist announcement, which is tough because readers who want to follow along might not be able to do so, and it means ultimately those books might not get as many readers as they otherwise would have. So I think that's a positive change, and yeah, good on the Booker Prize. Question 8, what is your favorite bookish discovery or achievement? So this could be a book, author, purchase, or a project or goal. So I have had a few reading projects going on that were quite fun. I ultimately bailed on making a video for this, but I read several books recommended to me by my dad when he was in town last month, and that was really lovely. He is also a big reader, but we don't tend to overlap in what we want to read very much. But for that project, I read Startide Rising by David Brin, which is classic space opera sci-fi about uplifting and genetically modifying pre-sapient species. I talked about that book a lot more in my last video where I was checking in on the 2026 R Fantasy Book Bingo Challenge if you want to hear me talk about that more. Another book that I read on his recommendation was Do I Know You by Sadie Dingfelder, which is a science writing and memoir nonfiction about the author coming to the realization in adulthood that she had severe face blindness. So she explains what that means for her, and she comes across other similar invisible disabilities or types of neurodivergence that are understudied and under-recognized, and that was a fun mixture of memoir and like pop science. That was fun. And then my dad's last recommendation that I read was funny because it's really not a book that's in either of our wheelhouses, but it was Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young, which is a romance between a couple where both of them have a limb difference. So the female lead has a congenital small hand, and the male lead had his lower leg amputated later in life. And it was just a really sweet romance with lovely disability representation. It is also an accidental pregnancy romance, so I think readers who don't want to read about that shouldn't pick it up, but I thought it was quite wholesome. And yeah, so I consider that project of getting and reading recommendations from my dad to be my favorite project of the year so far. I have done several more. I read the Tournament of Books long list in its entirety, which is crazy. I've never done that, like read so many books for one prize in one sitting before. And coming up, I'm judging for the BookTube prize for this quarter. So I'm reading 6 books, and I'm not supposed to review them until after the judging window has closed. So I'll talk about those more in another video. But yeah, I think I've been doing a lot of prize reading and a lot more focused on one prize reading than in the past. And so that's also a fun. I don't know if I'll do it again, but it's an achievement. And the next question is any DNFs? I have not DNF'd anything so far this year. It's pretty rare for me to do so. The book that I finished that I should not have finished, that I should have DNF'd, is My Friends by Frederick Bachman. That was my first Frederick Bachman book, and I had a feeling going in that Frederick Bachman wouldn't be for me, and I was right. The writing was super sappy, and I didn't feel like anyone behaved like a real person. I was annoyed because it just felt like everything that happened and everything anyone said or did was just in service of this sappy story. It didn't feel grounded in anything, and that made me unhappy. But I didn't DNF for the longest time because I was like, oh, it could get better, and it just didn't. So not for me is the diagnosis there. And question 10, name some misses. My Friends was definitely the biggest miss for me so far this year. My only 1-star rating. Other misses include The Unveiling by Quan Berry and We Love You, Bunny by Mona Awad. And I read both of those as part of the Tournament of Books long list. And I have similar criticism for both of those in that I think both of those books were just trying to do too much, trying to squeeze too much in. We Love You, Bunny in particular, I just don't think Bunny needed a sequel. And so I think just writing a sequel, just by writing a sequel, it was over explaining itself. So that was my opinion. They're both fine. I gave them 2 stars. So that's that. The next question is name some hits. I just finished Writers and Lovers by Lily King, and Lily King is another one of those authors that just writes what I like really well. Her characters always feel so authentic to me, in contrast to books where I'm like, this doesn't feel real. Her characters always feel really authentic to me, and she'll just sneak in these little observations about life that they don't feel overwritten, they don't feel overwrought. They just make me pause and think, and it just kind of like clicks with what my taste is really well. A lot of my other favorites I've already mentioned in videos on the channel. I am glad that The Correspondent won the Women's Prize for Fiction this year because that was another one of my favorites from earlier in the year. And I do sometimes struggle with epistolary novels, but I really liked the humor and the wit of The Correspondent. And it does, in retrospect, really feel like a Women's Prize book. So good for The Correspondent and Virginia Evans. Question 12, are there any books you want to get to before the end of the year? Besides the new releases I already talked about anticipating, I would really like to finish the House of Niccolo series by Dorothy Dunnett by the end of the year. This was one of my reading goals for the year, and I haven't continued it. I read 4 books last year, and that series has been on pause for me in the first half of this year. But I think once I pick it back up again, I'll be ready to hurry and finish the whole series. I think I can do it. And so that's how my bookish life is going. I would love to hear how your reading is going so far this year. Please feel free to answer any of these questions yourself down in the comments. And I hope you are having a great summer. See you next time.